How we doing, Steven? What's going on?
How are you guys, man? That's you guys have been crushing it. I've been watching you, and well done there. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, one of the things is like always, the markets are back and forth, and I think that's what a lot of the day traders forget. And you have to stay up with everything, especially in the day trading game, right? Yeah. When we're in kind of more in that investor hat or swing traders hat, we can kind of hang out a little bit more and kind of be more systematic. But that's the truth. The day trading game, that's that back and forth action. And we're seeing it clearly on a day like today with CPI coming in just a hair light, right? How did you react when you first saw that CPI print?
Yeah, I mean, with two things happened today, right? The Fed has been screaming about they need the inflation rate to come down. They want to see CPI print. They've been talking about JOLT forever. That's Janet Yellen's favorite numbers. And when those numbers started to come in the way that they like, that really made people feel like, hey, okay, we're going to get this Fed maybe getting cut, maybe a quarter point. If you look at it for the next month, the answer is absolutely 0%, right? Yeah. You ask the actual trader. But this is putting the Fed on the spot, because I've said this for a while, that they're way behind the 8 ball. To me, the ECB has been behind the 8 ball, the European, and you saw Christine Lagarde now finally saying, well, we've got some headwinds now, right? And so we don't want to be that country that says we're behind the 8 ball, right? So we want to make sure that we're ahead of that. And so now these prints are actually saying, okay, guess what? Jobs, unemployment, JOLTS, CPI print, they're all going the direction that says you got to start cutting. And one of the things that we do, that our biggest, well, I guess now it's $74 trillion worth, is housing, right? That's our biggest asset class in the United States. And because of that, we know that there's been a downturn. So, and we know we have a president that just loves real estate. So you're going to see those things. And I think you saw it 2 days ago when the market fell down on tweets of tariffs. I went out and bought, I shorted the VIX. I bought puts on the VIX. I went out and bought a Tesla heavy when Tesla I sold this morning at this nice jump here. I'm still long NVIDIA. The theses and the ideas of the markets and the technology has not changed. The whole thesis around and theme around AI hasn't changed. So until that changes, I'm not going to go bearish on this. I'm not scared.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's some things that you need to be thinking about, right? And the tariffs conversation is all like kind of seeing what was going to happen, right? Because there's this back and forth action. Is it 25? Is it 15? Is it 10? Right. So like I've mentioned, it's just a bunch of modeling, trying to guess on where we're going versus actual quantifiable data that's coming from the statistics, right? And when we look at inflation, all that scare that was, oh no, but inflation, that slight spike on the recent one before this one got some people really on the nerves. But this one just tells us more and more how, yeah, we could keep possibly some inflation. But like I mentioned, for tariffs inflation to show up, it's going to take a long time down the line. Yeah. It could be by like July, August time, by the time we see something of that start to show up in the numbers, the lag effect, right? And I think that's something to really be thinking about. Like you mentioned, I think more it's the pressure on the big bad wolf, Jerome Powell, that we got to be watching to see what happens there. And I mentioned it is good news, bad news in this case, that kind of mentality, right? And that's the hardest time, I think. And that's why the uncertainty in the market is so high right now, because some people are saying, well, if inflation goes higher, is that a good thing necessarily? Because, you got the stagflation talk and all that conversation, right?
Hey, look, I remember when stagflation, I talked about stagflation 4 months ago, and I was getting beat up on it. Now it's talking about all of it. Look, I don't think stagflation is going to happen, right? Because I think inflation is now coming down. It was going up. It's very simple. I call it channel checks, right? Go to the grocery store, eggs went through the roof, right? Price of milk's going through the roof. It's orange juice. Oh my goodness, right? I called it the breakfast trade for a while, back in the late 90s when I used to trade on the floors. Look, I will tell you right now that those things are coming down. People aren't feeling good right now, but I don't really care, right? I care about they're not feeling, but I'm looking at the future. The markets are about the future. They're not about what's happening right now. And it's the mispricing of pricing. And I think, Michael, you're if anybody, the CMT guy himself, right? Look at, that's exactly what it's about, right? That's why we trade the markets, because the markets aren't the right price. If they're the right price, you wouldn't buy or sell. right? So right now, if you're looking at the markets, to me, I think that, yeah, I love this chart coming up, the 10-year. And I would tell you, put the 10-year over the 2 and look at backwardation going on right now, right? So for me right now, I think you're right. Inflation's coming down. I do think that the Fed has got their fingers in it. They're ready to go. But I will say there is something, and Michael's probably going to give me a little headache over it, but I've told people lately, and I have been trading on charts since graph paper and pen. That's how old I am, right? But stop pearl clutching your charts, right? There's more to the markets than charting right now. I know there it is. Look, Tyler, what's different? And I love charting and I love the CMT, but it's not always about charts, right? And I always say this, and it's unintended.
Definitely.
News trumps charts, right?
Yes.
Always. Every time, right? So if news comes out, your charts are literally throw them out the door until the news abates, right? But we have to have something to show us where things are and where things are going. But the market, a lot of people don't, it's hard to explain to a lot of people, but where there's a seller, there's a buyer, all right? It's a mechanical machine, right? So we've got to find those buyers and we've got to find those sellers, and where's the liquidity? And I think we found that capitulation a couple of days ago when we just flushed, right? And that's when I said, okay, the chart is telling me now, the 200, the 50-day, we're below all of those things. Now we're out of whack, right? It's the mispricing of pricing. So we went back in, I bought, and of course today I started peeling all of that went off, right? And I want to see the mispricing of pricing again.
So I'm with you, like fully. Like I bought a bunch of stuff yesterday. I did a tweet about it that my hand was sore from hitting the buy button. But so for me, right, and for your own trading as well, is what are you looking for that would just completely kind of wipe that this is a short-term bottom out of the water? Is it just we make a new low? Are you looking for some rhetoric from the Fed, or what is it that says okay? Because again, I'm with you. So like most people should do, and kind of a lesson for the audience is, second you're in a trade, you should always be looking for, okay, what evidence is there that I'm potentially wrong, and that's going to get me out of the trade. So what are you looking for to say, okay?
That's exactly right. I mean, as you know me, Mitch and Michael, that I'm a thesis trader. I think more of like the overarching themes, right? 2 days ago, I was on Wolf Financial during the show, and I went, I'm pounding the table, and I haven't done that in 2 years. I'm buying. And it was like everybody's freaked out. Oh, no, that's not the best time to buy. You're trying to catch a knife, blah, blah, blah. You're right. And I did catch the knife, right? Why? Because that's where the capitulation was. That's where the volatility was. That's where the volume was. And that's where the buyers were saying, okay, this is too far. Now, for me, I have to think about that. We've got to see Trump lay off the toilet tweets, right? You got to stop, man. You got to start talking about normal common sense stuff, right? Yeah. But if you get past all of that, and I think he will, I think he's trying to I guess sledgehammer the market a little bit. Yeah. But I will say this much. Nothing has changed. There's the three things that I think that always gets us out of these problems is tech. The first thing I saw for the first time, and guys, I'm not a big Apple fan, but Apple says, look, we're going to change our whole OS up. It's coming OS. That's technology. Okay, we're going to increase our AI spend. So Apple said, okay, you know what? I'm not that good at Apple Intelligence, so I'm going to go with Gemini. And they did, right? They went to Google and they're going to partner and things. Great. Okay. Now, NVIDIA, go to the store and try to buy an NVIDIA chipset. Go try to buy the RTX 5070, right? The 5090. You can't do it, right? It's pulling teeth. Go to look at Intel. Intel are already they have the distribution. So you're looking at Taiwan Semi, thinking about buying them. If you see rates coming down, boom, right? They're going to have money to buy them. So these are the kind of things that I'm looking at. The third theme I think here for me is when I'm seeing the retail. The retailers are the zero DTEs, the gambling side of the whole market has got to slow down a bit, right? We saw $50 billion worth of zero DTEs go through 2 days ago. That is absolutely ludicrous. That is gambling. And everybody knows me. The market is not gambling. It is the greatest wealth creator in history. There's nothing on the planet at any time in history to make greater wealth than the stock market and the options market. But when we start to put it, creating a casino, that bothers me, right? So that's got to slow down a little bit. We got to get back to basics. That's what I've been saying. You got to get back to basics. And the basics are saying Google at a 19 PE,
exactly.
Apple at 22 or something. That's out of whack, right? That's not a tech company, and they are tech companies, right?
Yeah.
So that's the three things I think that we need to see in order to feel a lot better. But I'm not scared right now. I love, if you love Bitcoin at 100,000, you sure as hell should love Bitcoin at 76,000, right?
Exactly. No, I think it's what you need to see, and I think what you said it best is I feel like sometimes the market tries to act too logically, right? Instead of looking into where the logic makes sense. I know that sounds weird, but it's the truth, right? So like you mentioned, those knives, right? Everything in the books, if I turn to the books, is going to tell me, no, don't look at it. But the truth is, I've seen it in the last 5-10 years. Those V bottoms seem to work.
That's right.
It's not a big old rounding bottom, let everybody in kind of bottom. No, it's, oh, you thought this was not the time. And the market says, whoop, right back up.
The market can be more irrational than our accounts can handle it. I mean, I think Michael and I have a dear friend, Brian Shannon. He'll tell you anchored VWAP, right? He'll tell you exactly right where it should be, right? You know where the highs are, you know the lows are, and right there's where it should go bounce back to you, right? And I like that side of it. Let's get to AI, man. Let's talk about my favorite.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Of course, you got Quasar Markets. Tell us first a little bit about that, and then, of course, tell us how you use yourself AI in your trading. I think this is very important because, like I mentioned to everyone out there, if you're not leaning in, you're doing something wrong here.
That's right. Yeah. And, you know, I've been talking about AI for over 15 years now. So to me to see everybody talking about AI now, it's kind of like, huh? It's great. Okay, everybody's an AI master. Look, I'll tell you a couple things. So you asked about Quasar Markets. That's right. And you know, Money, Mitch, you and I worked at Benzinga together, senior VP there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, look, I am very passionate about distributed technologies when it comes to the markets, right? I think that sometimes I would say leveling the playing field, right? Why should the big boys have all of the data, all of the news? I don't think that's right. I think we should that should be distributed to everybody, right? And decentralize the data. So I also worked at Money.net, as you know, senior VP and chief strategy officer, and I thought about a year and a half ago, you know what, I've done it for everybody else. It's time to do it for myself and do it on a much bigger scale and worldwide. And you know, there's a lot of things I needed to do. I needed to raise money, and I needed to have developers. And I've got over 1,000 developers through Kiwi Tech and WebMob. Yeah, thank you. And you know what? In a year we did it. We built the whole system out. And what to me that I really like is that it's not just about the stock market. I learned when I worked at the White House, the State Department, I learned that the whole world matters, right? Meaning that if something happens in Japan, it's going to affect the trader in Arizona, right? And so I want to create something that has sports, news, weather, and do it in a way that it was on anything with your iPhone, your cell phone, your mobile app, your iPad, your Oculus, your Apple Vision Pro, which it all works great. You can touch screens and move things around. But then to also take all of this data, all the government data, all of the stocks, quotes, everything, charts, and shove it into AIs and do it in a way that was compliant and do it in a way that gave you a much better answer to a question you didn't even know to ask. And I can give you a good example. I can share my screen here in a second. And we did that too as well. We won 4 awards, 2 at Benzinga, I believe, and 2 at Finance Feeds International, already on the AI, and speak at WEF, World Economic Forum, and United Nations already about it. And we've won, and I love it, right? But what I wanted to do was empower the user to be able to find nuggets that they didn't know that was there, that, oh, wow, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs knew about it, but you did it, right? Yeah. I want to give the power back to the people. So we did that and do it in a way that kept all of this very, very cheap, as financially as frugal as I possibly could be. And we did that too, around $15-20 a month. So that's awesome. Yeah, and do it in a way that's speedy, and do it on brand new React and new Python versions. And I love the part here, but you talked about it earlier, algo trading through AI. We built that too as well, where it's low code, no code, so that a user can talk to the machine and the machine will build you out an algo without even having to know any kind of code as well.
Now you're talking my language right there.
Yeah, that's what it's about. And you mentioned thesis all the time, thesis trading, right? Things like this can definitely help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just want to kind of thank you and the other AI developers too, because like I mentioned, I'm a systematic trader. It's something that it's like that thing that I always wanted to get into, right? I've been trading for 20 years and I'm like, I could systematize a lot of what I do, but I'm not a coder, right? I went to school for finance. I got my CMT, all this stuff. So I really like what you talked about, that this just brings everything. Like, I could not do what I do now if it wasn't for just going to different AIs and saying, this is what I want. You know, I use this back tester called Real Test. I want you to build it, you know, figure it all out and then build it for me. So I love that. And for other traders and for people looking at the market, this is the kind of stuff you have to look at.
So, Michael, what if I could do it in a way that's also bringing in the abstract ideas too? So you have an idea, Google Trends or sports or things of that nature, and also shove that into your algorithm that you can't do anything else. We built that too because we have all the data. If I can share my screen, I'll
and go ahead, Steven. Go ahead and bring it up. I'll bring it up in just a second. But I can tell you I do all that and I just do it manually. So this will definitely help, right? I mean, it's just the truth, right? I look at Google Trends all the time. So I'm looking at that because that's the way that I feel retail still has an advantage. You if you want an advantage, you got to go looking in all the information we have available to us.
Right.
The hard part is looking and deciphering through the noise. And that's exactly what this is essentially for. It's trying to help us decipher between the noise and what could actually help us in many different ways.
Hallucinates. So what if I could take the AI and attach them to the actual database, Fred and Edgar, and not let the AIs get outside of it? And I think a lot of problems with a lot of AI companies is that they're just using ChatGPT and they're just trying to get a chart. And I didn't want just that. I wanted to create a complete thesis, theming, give you every data point and then explain to you what it is that you're actually seeing too. So we did all of that. And if you can pull it up here, I think I'm sharing my
I got you right now. Just give me 1 second here. StreamYard made some adjustments that makes it a little harder, but here we go.
All right, you'll see here that I've made a couple posts and I'll pull them all up as a time. But my idea here was, you know, people talk about from the M2 side, the money supply, right? So I didn't want to just know money supply and how it's affecting it, but I've said, look, how does money supply, the unemployment rate, CPI, the Fed fund rate, and inflation rate over the last 70 years, how has it affected the markets? Well, the three of us here, we understand this chart probably better than anybody, right? But I wanted to be able to give the thing turned around and actually give you the answer. And the answer to this was, well, we're seeing the whole thing again, right? So in the 80s, we saw high inflation, we saw high unemployment. And when those things turned around, the markets went up in the 80s, late 80s. So we needed to see a turnaround, and we're seeing that again, right? Inflation coming down. We're seeing money supply still going out there. Unemployment rate slipping up just a little bit, and we're seeing the Fed fund rate will probably come down again. So guess what? That's a thesis and a theme of why the market's going to go back up. It's underpinning it. Michael asked me that earlier, right? These are the kind of insights that I want to see. Earlier, I did one too again about inflation and talking about unemployment, and then the 10 and 2s. I think you showed the 10 year earlier. I love that, right? We're seeing the exact same thing. When we see these numbers come through, the inflation rate pops through, the unemployment rate, which we're about to see it again. Guess what happens? This is between 80s and 90s. Guess what happened at that time? The markets went straight up. Right. So we're going to see that again. And the third thing that I think, Mitch, you know, I've been talking about this for many, many years is the wealth transfer. I call it the greatest wealth transfer in history. But that's great. But I actually wanted to understand that, right? When is it going to physically happen? I've been talking about it. Did not know. So I put in asset class breakdown. I wanted to put the baby boomer mortality rates into the system and find that wealth transfer. And we found out, and I can tell you the answer to the question now. It's 2037. Right now, I can buy long-dated puts and calls on real estate and retirement accounts and cash and understand that, right? So that's the kind of stuff, and to be able to explain and exactly how much money, where the money is going to flow to, and when it's going to flow to it. So those are the kind of AI things.
Just to pause you there on that tweet too. What's funny is that just to show the proliferation of AI, the first comment there is adding Grok to break down the chart for you. So you use AI to build it. A user looks at it and maybe just doesn't quite understand it, and he's using AI to interpret it. So again, it just shows that, again, the power of these.
And Michael, do you know how long when I did these things in the past? It would take me a day. When I do shows with Benzinga or shows, it would take me a day to have to go through all this. I did this in 7 minutes. Right?
Wow.
Coming up with the idea and showing how to create the charts and building it out. The machine did it in a few minutes, but to give everything, to pull up all the data and put it into it, I had to do that. But now I've actually made it easier. If you guys are okay with it, I'll show you Quasar Markets.
Sure.
And I'll show you. You can see here we built this thing so you can watch TV on it. We can watch stock twits, financials, weather data, Twitter news, all the things you can imagine.
I think you're gonna have Elon call you and say you stole an idea, bro.
I was ahead of the game before him.
Let him know. Let him know, Steven. Let him know. The Everything app. Oh, oops! I think it's already here, guys.
Yeah, I wanted to show our AI that we won so many awards on it, and I know that my screens are very big, so I will go ahead. You can see how fast the machine is, by the way. But on the left-hand side, you can see these are the questions that I've been asking, right? And over here, the right-hand questions are what others in our teams have been asking, right? But we wanted to do it in a way that I could ask whether we can ask our own AI, which is Quasar Markets AI, which has about 16 AIs into it, by the way. It's not just, adding one AI into it. And then we also want to do it in a way that you could actually ask the databases, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, I just want to ask NASDAQ data. I want to know a fundamental question. I'm going to ask about Microsoft's XYZ, right? And I also wanted to know what others were asking, and I wanted to know what the most asked questions. So I already knew where to start the AI process, right? So if I ask what are the latest consumer confidence numbers, that the machine will actually start to give me those answers, right? And then tell me where they came from. And then, Michael, you'll love this, but to also cover compliance, to be able to tell me where the data came from and also timestamp it too as well.
Great.
So
yeah, because I think that's something that's huge with AI. You want to see where you got it from, because you're right. Sometimes there can be some weird hallucination or something. So it's always good to have that source. So especially sometimes the AI does something that looks a little fishy. You want to be able to go in and look at it quickly. Even if it's right, then you're like, okay, at least I've done my due diligence and I know it's kind of right.
Absolutely. And I didn't want to just think like a Google search or on Google search on steroids. I wanted to build something that gave me contextual, give me relevant facts around things I didn't even know. And as it's answering the questions to me, right, it's telling me things I didn't even know to ask about the CPI. It's going to say, okay, Steve, you've asked a good question, but here's the other questions that you should be asking, right? And there's a timestamp, and it's got large language modeling in it too, so I can talk to it and all that. And then I can also prediction AI and generative AI as well. So I wanted something that had built all of that into one, not one AI, but to build everything, right? To build a SaaS and to build it in the system. So I'm going to stop my sharing now, Mitch.
Cool. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm going on the VIX short here, and we're going to go ahead and take a look and seeing how we can use AI more often. I think this is really exactly what it's all about, guys. I hope you guys appreciate us going through this, because I know how it can be. The first thing when you see new technology, it can be like, is this going to break humans, right? Is this going to break the jobs and things like that? No, there's just new ways of doing things, guys. It's like when we didn't have computers and then we got computers, right? People were yelling in the streets, but no, you're going to get cancer in those rooms. Well, now I have how many screens and how many computers around me, right? I mean, come on, guys. And this is the important thing, guys. You have to lean into technology. You have to be thinking like Steven mentioned here, and you guys hear me mention it all the time, creating those theses, right? You hear Michael say it all the time, like kind of scientific method style of trading, right? Yes. Because that can be something that we can look back and build on, right? Even if we make mistakes, we can learn from it. And this is exactly what these types of tools are able to help you. So Steven, thanks for bringing it on today, guys. The Big Beat, bringing the beat on here for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And definitely I'll throw up the link here to both your Twitter and of course Quasar Market, so you guys can check it out for yourself. And keep following on Steven, because he puts up a lot of this information right there on Twitter for you guys to kind of take it in. And I appreciate this as being someone that tries to, of course, follow really high quality posting and profiles on Twitter. Check him out, guys. Thank you for coming on today. And I know Michael, his head's spinning over here. He's ready to get working, man.
I'm gonna play. That's for sure.
Well, I'd love to have you both on my shows as well at Quasar Markets Live. Yeah. But guys, listen, Mitch, I've known you a long time. I really appreciate your friendship, and Michael too as well. And look, look what we do. And I say this all the time. Like, there's so many people that are on YouTube and streaming and all that. But it doesn't make you a knowledgeable person. I mean, you have the background, as I call it, the pedigree, right, to help people. And I really appreciate what you're doing, because I believe that this is the way, as they say in The Mandalorian. This is the way, right? Because look, there's so many people out there that are just giving bad information, and I appreciate the way that you guys do it, because it's the real deal. So
yeah,
Thank you.
that's what it's about, man. Have a good one, Steve. We'll bring you back on. And like always, guys, check him out. BigBeat.